Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. Well, today we're going to talk about the idiom to bury the hatchet. Now, this is a very common idiom in the UK, and it's when we want to reconcile with someone. If you've had an argument, maybe, and you want to make peace with the enemy, we call that burying the hatchets. So, for example, are you and your wife still arguing? Oh, yes, I really hope we can bury the hatchet soon. Oh, my boss and I we buried the hatchet over that pay rise, so at least now we can get on with our work. We usually use it in personal circumstances. We can't talk about countries burying the hatchet with each other, which is a pity with all of these wars which are going on around the world. But bury the hatchet is something that we use a lot in the UK when two people have been arguing. So you can say, for example, oh, I buried the hatchet with my friends. Or my wife and I, we are currently trying to bury the hatchet, trying to reconcile. Okay? So it just means finding peace or finding a way to move on from an argument. To bury, as you all know, means to dig a hole in the ground, to put somebody or something in it. And a hatchet is a type of axe, okay? You know, when you want to fell a tree or to cut down a tree, you take an axe and then you start to hit the axe against the tree until the tree falls. So a hatchet or an axe, it's like a piece of wood with a large metal blade on the end. Yeah. You get little ones to chop meat. If you've ever watched any movies with medieval butchers, they've got these big kind of knives, but bigger than a usual knife. It's got a big handle and a big chunk of metal. So an axe looks something like that, but the handle is longer. Canadian people use them all the time. I'm sure you've seen them on YouTube or in the movies, you know, knocking down trees. So that's a hatchet. So to bury the hatchet means to reconcile or to make up with your friends. This weekend in the northern part of the UK is the Gaelic speaking festival, and my family and we've been arguing about whether we should actually go to this. So we finally buried the hatchet and agreed that we would go to one of the festivities, but not all of them. And I wanted to take a moment just to explain about Indigenous languages around the UK, because there is a myth out there, a wrong idea, that all across the UK everyone only speaks English. Okay, so I want to tell you that in many of our communities, there are a lot of bilingual people. Okay, so everyone speaks English. More and more people are trying to disassociate themselves from that because they don't like English politics, or they just feel that English is a bit too dominant. So we're going to talk about the languages around the UK. So of course we have English, which everyone speaks. And then there's also Welsh, which 1.7% of the population of the UK speak. So that's a whole chunk of Welsh people. That's a language which is very, very old. Okay, it's an indigenous language. It's been there long before English speakers arrived. There's also Scots Gaelic, which is the festival that's being celebrated this weekend. There's also something called Ulster Scots. So 2.6% of the population speak Ulster Scots. British Sign Language, 125,000 people use that. Irish, 95,000 people in the UK speak Irish. We have Anglo-Romani, which is spoken by the traveling community. That's like English gypsies. There's 90,000 people speak that. Scottish Gaelic, 65,000 speak it out of a population of the UK. I don't know how many people are in the UK, but 65,000 people in Scotland speak it. Okay, I think in Scotland alone there's around 6 million people. So that gives you an idea that it's not too many. Cornish, it was a little language in Cornwall. 557 people still speak that. Shelta is the language of the Irish gypsies. And there's 30,000 of those in the UK. So that gives you a very rough idea of the number of languages we have here in the UK. Probably the biggest of those two would be Welsh and Scottish Gaelic, because we hear those on the radio, on TV. There's a Welsh TV channel, a Scottish Gaelic TV channel. And these days, these languages are being used for political purposes to further the cause of separation, division, and independence. Not everyone speaks Gaelic. In fact, 1% of the population do, less than 1% in the north. So it's a bit difficult. I mean, the government, the Scottish government, has ordered the police to ensure that their cars have the Gaelic word for police written on them. And if you're in Scotland and you see an ambulance flashing by, you might be a bit confused because it has the word ambulance on there, but it's not written in English. It's written in Gaelic, so it looks a bit strange. Train stations, the Scottish government has ordered that all of them must show place names in Gaelic as well as English. So you'll see that if you ever go to a Scottish train station. And also the boats must carry bilingual signs as well. So it's very strange. A lot of people here are very against that. The same in Wales. I think the argument now is political. So the people who support the central government don't really want to see so much Gaelic. And the people who support the local government, who are pushing for independence, both in Wales and Scotland, they would be learning, Gaelic. Gaelic is a very, very old language. My grandparents spoke it, so I know it, but I can't really write it. I learned to read it a few years ago when it became very prominent, but it's not something that I would use because it's of no use to anybody unless a Gaelic-speaking club, which is there for people. And I think a lot of them have rather extreme political views, so it's not something that I would be involved with. But it's nice. I suppose it's part of an identity, but I think it's an identity that's been shaped now for a particular purpose. Anyway, there's Gaelic movies coming out now and other Gaelic things, so it's a great time to see it being celebrated. And this music festival, which is coming up this weekend, it's called the Royal Maud, and Maud is a Gaelic word which simply means assembly or meeting, you could say. Yes. And It's called the Royal Mod because it was authorized by one of the old kings or queens. I believe it came from Queen Victoria, and it started in a place called Euban in 1891. And this Gaelic festival supports the teaching, learning, and use of Gaelic. But to be honest with you, it's kind of like a music festival, but a folk music festival. They recite poetry, they sing songs, they dress badly, that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's not really of any use unless you're really, really interested in Gaelic. And even then, I'm not sure you'd want to go to a folk music festival. It's very much an acquired taste. So I hope that gives you some kind of background into Indigenous languages in the UK. So if you thought that you were coming here to see English everywhere, you'll be surprised to find that Wales and Scotland, especially, they really are trying to carve an identity which is not English for whatever reason. So that's just good to remember. And also, if you go to a place like maybe the west of London, you might start seeing signs in Arabic, Bengali, and Urdu because we are very diverse and we try to celebrate that by putting road signs in those languages as well. In fact, I know that one train station, Southall, which is in the London area, it has the signs in English and Punjabi. So it just shows how we try to accommodate diversity, but we also try to protect our own languages. So there we are. I hope that gives you some idea of our alive indigenous languages around the UK. Not so many people speak them, but there are huge efforts underway to protect them and to revive them. We even have Gaelic schools now, which teach Gaelic along, of course, with English, which is the national syllabus or curriculum. So there we are. That's a little bit of knowledge for you about Gaelic. When I was growing up, you were punished if you were even known to have spoken Gaelic. But it was in my family thanks to my grandparents, so I'm very pleased about that. But, well, that's it from me. I hope you found this helpful, and let's talk again soon, okay? See you. Bye.